Alrighty, everybody. So feel free to go back to those first two slides. They weren't very long. But what you're going to do this time is you're going to practice remotely shading a sphere using colored pencils. So trace whatever you'd like. I'm shading a red sphere, so you're welcome to do that as well, or use a different color that you see in your Legos that you selected. So I'm starting with yellow for a highlight for the red. Yellow would work as a nice highlight color for any of the warm colors like yellow, orange, or red. Peach would be a nice highlight color as well for a yellow sphere. All right, so I put in those kind of highlights. There's reflected light on the bottom, and there is a highlight on the top right of the sphere. Now I'm going in with an orange color and shading next to the yellow, so I'm getting slightly darker. This is a long video, so feel free to fast forward slightly as we go, so you get the most important parts, though. All right, so I'm adding orange pretty much everywhere. Now remember, this is just a practice, so don't worry too much what it looks like. This is really where you're going to have the ability to make all your mistakes on your sketchbook work. I'm making the bottom of the sphere a little bit darker. I'm using a little bit of a harder pressure for the bottom. And then I'm lightening up as I go up the sphere. When you're shading, feel free to keep, as I'm doing, the slide up that has the colored spheres. And you're kind of copying one of those spheres, copying where the highlights are and the shadows. All right, now I'm going in with my red, and I'm going to put that pretty much everywhere, but I'm going to press a little bit harder on the bottom left of the sphere. So pressure can help you darken, but also the colors you're using can help you make a darker value. So it takes time. I tend to want to rush and finish it right away. So if you're the same way, then just know it takes a little bit of time. So even with as much experience as I have, it still takes about 8 minutes to do this assignment. So it will probably take you more than that. All right, so the left side, I'm pressing down harder to make a darker value. On the right side, I'm doing the same. And I'm having that shadow creep up the top right of the sphere. There's a highlight on the right, but there is a little bit of a shadow on the far right. Underneath the reflected light that's yellow, I'm adding a little bit of red too, so that it goes from red, yellow, and back to red again. And I'm trying to fill in the space. By the end, we shouldn't see a whole lot of white on the sphere. We should see colored pencils takes time, and you layer colors slowly. And the more you layer, the more bright and radiant the color becomes. It is a slow buildup of color, and that's how it should be. All right, now I'm going in with purple to start to darken. Purple is a nice shadow for blue, red, orange even. Could be a nice shadow for even a yellow. So again, the bottom left, I'm making the darkest on my sphere. Look at that picture though, when you're doing yours, as I'm doing. Copying the shadows and the highlights and where they are. I hope this video just shows you that it does take a good amount of time and you're not going to see the results right away. You have to kind of persist. Now it's not getting dark enough, so I'm going to skip that blue. On the top right, I kind of show the colors that I use. It's not getting dark enough though, so I'm going to jump right into black and start shading. This is called a shade when you add black to a color, both in paint and in colored pencils. I'm using the pressure to go darker and also the color to go darker. Continue layering, and then I'm going to go back in with my red to make it look more like a dark red rather than a black shadow. So I'm layering the red on top of the black values that I put in. I'm coming up on the top right with that shadow too, and going in with my red on the top right. Now it's starting to look more round and less flat, this sphere. And now I'm going to do the shadow that's on the ground. This will make the sphere look like it's sitting on something and becoming three-dimensional rather than just flat. So I'm using red first. The red would reflect onto the table from the sphere. And then I'm putting black over it. I'm going to go really dark so that it really appears as a shadow, like it's underneath the sphere. Now, when you're ready, you're going to do the same. Again, we started in pencil, we traced a circle, and then you added highlights and shadows to it using colored pencil. Yellow is a nice highlight for a lot of colors. And if you'd like to just copy what I did, if you're not sure what colors to use, go for it. I think that example has a handful of different colors you can choose, though. I'm going back in and just burnishing a little bit. Burnishing is like the last step using colored pencils where you press down a little bit harder when you layer. So that it becomes a little more luminescent and a little less flat. I'm going in with my red and doing the same thing. Again, just pressing a little bit harder. That's called burnishing. We do have colorless blenders you can use in class, but for this exercise, we'll just use colored pencils. And again, it's just pressing down a little harder after you've done many layers using colored pencils, and it kind of makes your color look shiny and a little more brilliant. All right, so when you're ready, go for it. Just do your best. Remember, this is just a sketch. Upload your work when you're done.